The world is watching the Middle East with great concern, as tensions reach a boiling point. A dangerous new chapter has opened in the long and bitter conflict between Iran and Israel. It began with a large-scale Israeli airstrike deep into Iranian territory, shocking the region. Israeli jets carried powerful bunker-buster bombs targeting Iran's most sensitive and fortified nuclear sites. This was not a small raid but a massive, carefully planned and coordinated attack. The world held its breath as news of the first explosions broke across major cities. Over 60 sites were hit, many located near Tehran and in western Iran. The main focus was Iran's nuclear program, especially the Natanz and Esfahan sites. Israel also struck military command centers and key security headquarters. The strikes followed failed diplomacy and rising tensions over Iran's nuclear ambitions. Israel's goal: to stop Iran from building a nuclear weapon at any cost. The operation was framed as self-defense, aiming to set back Iran's nuclear program and weaken its military. Israel reportedly had U.S. approval, creating a critical window for action and coordination. Believing delay would only increase the danger, Israel decided to act decisively and swiftly. Iran responded swiftly to the Israeli attack. The leadership promised a harsh reply, launching Operation Severe Punishment. For the first time, Iran directly attacked Israeli territory from its own soil. Hundreds of missiles and drones targeted major Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv and Haifa. This marked a major escalation, showing Iran's willingness to strike directly. Israel's air defenses lit up the night sky, intercepting many threats. The new Hajj Qassam missile was used, with some reports of it breaching Israeli defenses. Analysts say Iran's response was strong but likely limited to avoid all-out war. The world reacted with alarm. The UN Security Council held emergency meetings. World leaders called for restraint and de-escalation. Iran threatened to close the Strait of Hormuz, risking global oil supply and economic stability. This conflict is not just about military strategy and geopolitics. It has a real and tragic human cost that cannot be ignored. In Iran, Israeli airstrikes have killed hundreds, including many innocent civilians, and wounded over 1,000 more, leaving families shattered and communities in mourning. Daily life has been upended by blackouts and fuel shortages, fueling public anger and frustration at the government's inability to protect its people. In Israel, Iranian missile and drone attacks have killed dozens and forced countless families into shelters, living in constant fear. Schools and businesses have closed, playgrounds stand empty, and anxiety hangs heavily over the entire country. The United States has played a crucial but complicated role supporting Israel with military aid, intelligence, and advanced missile defense systems. President Trump insists the U.S. is not a direct participant in the conflict, but has demanded Iran's surrender and rejected repeated calls for a ceasefire. Iran's leaders warn that any direct U.S. action would mean all-out war, but some officials hint at a willingness to negotiate if the attacks stop. The world watches anxiously, hoping for a path back to diplomacy and a lasting peace in the region. The current fighting between Iran and Israel is not a new problem that appeared overnight. It is the result of a long and complicated history, shaped by decades of political, religious, and strategic rivalry. It is the latest eruption in a conflict that has been building for decades, with each side seeing the other as a fundamental threat to its existence. The hostility has deep roots, going back to the Iranian Revolution of 1979, which dramatically changed the region's political landscape. Before the revolution, the two countries had relatively normal relations, even cooperating on some economic and security matters. But after the revolution, Iran's new leaders adopted a strong anti-Israel ideology, making opposition to Israel a central part of their identity. They began to view Israel as an illegitimate state and an extension of American influence in the Middle East, fueling further animosity. This fundamental opposition to Israel's very existence has been a cornerstone of Iranian foreign policy ever since, shaping its actions at home and abroad. A key part of Iran's strategy has been to support and fund a network of proxy groups that share its anti-Israel goals, extending its reach across the region. These groups include Hezbollah in Lebanon and Hamas in the Palestinian territories, both of which have fought multiple conflicts with Israel. For years, Iran has provided them with money, weapons, and training to carry out attacks against Israel, fueling a cycle of violence. This has allowed Iran to wage a shadow war against its enemy without engaging in direct, state-to-state combat, keeping the conflict simmering. For Israel, These proxy forces represent a constant and immediate threat on its borders, forcing it to remain on high alert. It has fought several wars against these groups, and sees them as a direct extension of the Iranian regime, not just local militias. The other major driver of the conflict has been Iran's nuclear program, which has raised alarm bells in Israel and beyond. Iran insists its program is for peaceful purposes, such as generating electricity and advancing scientific research. However, Israel and many Western countries, including the United States, are convinced that Iran is secretly trying to develop nuclear weapons. From Israel's perspective, an Iran armed with nuclear bombs is the ultimate threat to its survival and cannot be tolerated. This fear has driven Israel to take extraordinary measures, including cyber attacks, assassinations of Iranian scientists, and now, large-scale military strikes. The nuclear issue has become the central and most dangerous point of contention between the two nations, overshadowing all other disputes. These long-standing issues form the foundation of the current crisis, making peace seem almost impossible. The conflict is a toxic mix of ideological opposition, a long-running proxy war, and a high-stakes race against a potential nuclear threat. Each missile fired and each bomb dropped today is connected to this long and bitter history, echoing decades of unresolved grievances. The latest events, from the Israeli strikes on nuclear sites to Iran's direct retaliation, are a dangerous escalation of this old rivalry, pushing the region closer to the brink. Resolving this conflict will require addressing not just the immediate violence, but also the deep-seated mistrust and hostility that have defined the relationship between Iran and Israel for more than 40 years. Only by confronting these underlying issues can there be hope for a lasting peace.